people can get a bit obsessed about
Yes.
discerning
Yeah.
the spirits that are, the spirit of my neighborhood, or the spirit of this nation, or the spirit of that nation.
And the New Testament writers and the missionaries of the New Testament don't seem to do that, do
No,
they?
they don't. I think if we want to have our eyes open to the spiritual realm, we should start by looking up rather than looking
I
down.
like that. Very good.
Yeah.
A man of discernment is one who sees the eternal, not the infernal.
Hello and welcome to the final episode of Season 7 of the All Nations Church podcast, where we have been going through the book of Daniel with Kier Adams.
Hello.
And Chris Hamer-Hodges.
Hi.
We trust that you have enjoyed and appreciated the episodes so far. We appreciate that some of them there's been some heavy lifting, there's some biblical imagery, some interpretations of symbols and signs, but all the way along, we've been led so ably by Chris to see the Lord Jesus and God's purpose all the way through the book. And in our last episode, we looked together at chapters 8 and 9. And we're going to attempt to navigate the final 3 chapters of the book of Daniel chapters 10, 11 and 12 together in this episode. Although it's 3 chapters, 3 is quite sizable chapters, they do form a kind of a piece all together. So we're going to attempt to kind of navigate them together, and we're going to begin by summarising chapter 10. Mm-hmm. And when I say we, of course, Kier, we mean Chris. So chapter 10, I think, really fascinatingly begins. Daniel tells us that this is in the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia.
That's right.
So this is actually later than any of the kind of historical narratives.
That's right. This is coming right at the end.
Right at the end.
Yeah.
Possibly right at the end of his life.
Indeed.
His old name comes back again. Interestingly, he's called Belteshazzar again. Daniel, who's called Belteshazzar.
Yeah.
He describes having a word about a great conflict, and that he understood the word and he understood the vision. So summarise for us what happens in Daniel chapter 10 for us, Chris.
Yeah, so Daniel chapter 10, Daniel has a significant encounter. He has an encounter with a man. A man comes and meets with him, but it's while he was mourning and fasting, and he has this vision of a man, and his appearance is quite striking. It says, "I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude." And Daniel falls down when he encounters this man, and the man touches him and raises him up and encourages him, and then goes on to give him the vision, which is in the chapters 11 and 12. But I think the reason why this is worthy of a chapter and a kind of in-depth look is, who is this man?
Yeah.
Who is it that's so, Daniel's already met Gabriel. Mm-hmm. Who is there that's more awesome and more mighty, that's going to be so terrifying that he kind of falls down and has no strength? And when you compare some of the imagery that you find in this chapter with some of the other imagery that you find when other prophets encounter the risen Lord, like John in the book of Revelation, or Ezekiel when he has his vision of the Lord, or even Saul on the Damascus road, you start to notice some real striking similarities.
Yes.
And so I would say it's not a stretch to say that Daniel, the man who had been given so much revelation about Jesus, now kind of has the ultimate experience where he meets the Lord face to face. This is the pre-incarnate Christ appearing to Daniel as a man highly loved and favoured, which is just Amazing. We said, didn't we, that Daniel probably felt that he missed out in the fiery furnace, that he didn't encounter that fourth one like a son of the gods walking amongst the flames. But here we see, I believe, Daniel's own encounter with the Lord.
Yeah.
And it does really chime in with some other encounters like you've described. There's lots of... this is a classic bit where this is the younger brother of Revelation, isn't
Absolutely,
it?
yeah.
John 1 really does chime in with some kind of descriptions.
Yeah.
Eyes like flaming torches.
Indeed.
Immediately you're going to that that picture of Jesus in John.
Indeed.
People falling at his feet.
Yeah.
And even the fact that Daniel falls asleep at the end of it.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating because the disciples fell asleep at the Mount of Transfiguration.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
And Elijah is kind of put to sleep by God.
Yes,
in between
indeed.
encounters with him. So it's this phenomenal, kind of awesome, overwhelming encounter that definitely leaves us with no doubt that this is the Lord.
Yeah.
And I find it really amazing that of all the things that the Lord could have said to Daniel, one of the first things he said to him is, "Oh, Daniel, you're greatly loved."
Yeah. It's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, really chimes in with the book of Revelation, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
And all the way through the book of Daniel, you've shown us how sovereign, awesome, powerful, wise, and in control God is. He's been the Ancient of Days. He's the high and lofty one.
Yeah.
And yet in this passage here, we see too, he remains the God of the individual, the God who's my shepherd, the God the lover of our souls. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Comes with a message and says, "You're greatly loved.
Yeah.
You're greatly favoured.
Don't be afraid."
Yeah.
It's all really personal and quite inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now he does go on to say some really interesting things as well. This man that piqued the interest of people ever since. He talks about princes of Persia, later on princes of Greece.
Yeah.
He talks about Michael, a chief prince.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who are they and what are they?
Well, let's start with the end. Let's start with Michael, because I think that's probably the clearest one. So Michael is the archangel.
Yeah.
So we find that out in the book of Jude, where Jude says talks about the archangel Michael. Mm-hmm. People often confuse Gabriel with an archangel, but in the scriptures, Gabriel is never given that title. The archangel means the chief angel, and that role is given to Michael. Yeah. So, as we've said, what's remarkable about the book of Daniel is the appearance of these two angelic messengers. Gabriel, who seems to have been tasked to be the herald of Christ's first coming, and then Michael, who we're told it will be with the shout and the trumpet of the archangel that Christ will return.
Right.
So you have these two angelic messengers, one who announces his first coming and one who announces his second coming. And it's telling that in the timeline that we've looked at, the timeline goes all the way from the kingdoms and the empires where Daniel was, all the way through to the coming of the Messiah, which we saw in that last chapter, the restoration of all things and the establishing of the kingdom as the rock that was cut out, but goes all the way right to the end and the final judgment, and that this risen Christ, he's currently encountering, will come again with the sound of the archangel.
And then Michael seems... Michael, I would say always, Michael often seems... I'm trying to get my words right. Michael is consistently presented as an angel at war.
Yes.
So in the example you've mentioned in Jude, he is disputing with the devil over the body of Moses. Yep. Says to him, "The Lord rebuke you."
Yeah.
In the book of Revelation, when we meet Michael, he is leading the angelic host in fighting the war in heaven that causes Satan to be cast out.
Yeah.
And here he's in conflict with the princes of Persia. So he seems to be a warrior figure, a mighty figure.
He does, yeah.
Does that give us any insight into what's going on here with these princes? One assumes these princes aren't natural human princes.
No, they seem to, if you like, anthropomorphize or encapsulate, as we've said, the spirit behind these nations, these empires that were in conflict.
Okay.
As we saw them in the statues, and then the beasts coming out of the raging sea. These represent nations that are opposed to God and his purpose, and yet nevertheless are still kept in check and kept in control. And it seems to be that Michael has that job of corralling the nations and the spiritual powers that are at work behind them, so that ultimately it's God's purpose that prevails.
Does that mean that for certain, behind every kind of political power, significant power in the world, there is a spiritual power as well? Is that too big a leap to draw?
I think there is certainly there's a spiritual side to man, isn't there?
Yeah.
And so there is a spiritual dimension that we're often unaware of. I think I would sound a bit of a note of caution, because people can get a bit obsessed about discerning the spirits that are, the spirit of my neighbourhood, or the spirit of this nation, or the spirit of that nation.
And the New Testament writers and the missionaries of the New Testament don't seem to do that, do
No,
they?
they don't. I think if we want to have our eyes open to the spiritual realm, we should start by looking up rather than looking down.
I like that. Very good.
Yeah.
A man of discernment is one who sees the eternal, not the infernal.
Yeah, very good.
So, when
Something else that we're going to steal and pretend was ours. Man of discernment sees the eternal, not the infernal.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So when Elijah prays for his servant and says, "Open the young man's eyes," he sees, and his vision is open to see what's going on in the spiritual realm. But what's going on in the spiritual realm is not hundreds of demons trying to, make him miss his bus or have to leave home without his breakfast, or whatever other calamity might befall him that day. But actually to see the angels of the Lord encamped around him, and that there are more who are for us than are against us. And yes, there might be demonic powers at work, but they are insignificant compared to the power of Christ and all the angelic host.
Yes.
Even if you were to take, the fall of Satan literally, that it was a third of the angels that were swept out of heaven in Satan's rebellion, that means that the angels still outnumber the demons 2-1. So if you want to come to me and talk to me about demons you've discerned, I expect at least 2 angelic encounters.
Brilliant. I love that.
What's interesting too, I think, and this happens a number of times throughout Daniel, but it happens really specifically here, is there's a toll that these visions take on Daniel.
Yes,
a
for
physical
sure.
or emotional or spiritual toll. And yet he talks repeatedly about how the man strengthens him.
Yes, that's right.
And I love that like you've just been saying now, regardless of what's going on in our spiritual life or what we're seeing in prayer or whatever else, what's available to us from the Lord is grace and strength to endure whatever we're going through.
Yeah.
I find that really, really helpful and really inspiring.
You see a parallel with that in Ezekiel, where Ezekiel meets the Lord and he falls down without any strength, and the Lord touches him, and it says the Spirit of the Lord raised him up. And I just love that phrase. When we reach the end of our own strength, he touches us and his Spirit raises us up.
Yeah. That's been a little theme, actually. All the way through the series, you've made me think in ways I hadn't before that there are far more parallels between Ezekiel and Daniel than I perhaps thought. Yeah. And it's not just that they are, or maybe it is the fact that they're prophesying at the same time.
Yes.
But obviously we know that Ezekiel knew who Daniel was.
Yeah.
Daniel was a national figure, so maybe he didn't know who Ezekiel was. We don't know. I'm speculating now. But there does seem to be a kinship in terms of their ministries that's worth exploring, I think.
Definitely.
So that's a podcast for another time. Yeah. Anything else you want to draw from chapter 10, or do you want to summarise 11 and 12 for us?
I think we can move on to...
okay.
I think...
so the man then shares a vision with Daniel.
Yes.
And you hinted in one of the previous podcast episodes that
Yes,
which
yeah.
is the theme of Daniel and a theme
Yes.
of prophetic
Yeah.
ministry. So what summarise for us what happens in 11 and 12?
Well, I'll start with 11, and then we can get on
Yes,
to 12.
the tension. He's keeping it back.
Yeah.
I like it.
So in 11, we encounter these mysterious figures, the king of the north and the south. So just as when we looked at the vision of the ram and the goat, we were still in that same prophetic timeline that we were given right from Daniel chapter 2 with the statue and the rock. And we're still in that timeline. But now we're kind of zooming in to the period between... So the ram and the goat was the transition from the Medo-Persian to the Greek. Now we're looking at the transition between the Greek and the Roman, and we're kind of zooming in to that in-between stage. So historically, we know, as we say, Alexander the Great came to power when he was a very young man, late teens, early 20s. By the time he was 32, he'd conquered all of the known worlds and then dropped dead suddenly from a mysterious illness in Babylon. Didn't leave an obvious heir, and so fighting broke out almost immediately between four of his most prominent generals. And we see that imagery in the book of Daniel about his kingdom being divided into four. So we have Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucus and Ptolemy. And after lots of scheming and alliances and backstabbing and wars, it really came down to kind of the last two men standing, which was Seleucus in the northern kingdom, which encompassed the kind of old Babylonian and Persian empires in Asia, and Ptolemy bedded in to Egypt, or Greater Egypt, so North Africa, and then stuck in the middle between these two rivals was the land of Israel. And so this power play that would go back and forth for the next 3 centuries had Jerusalem and God's people in the middle of it. And sometimes there would be Ptolemy would move his armies north, because the only time that Egypt had ever been invaded in history was through Palestine. And so that land was strategic for him to keep his own kingdom safe. Right. But it was also strategic for Seleucus because of the eastern Mediterranean ports of Tyre and Sidon. And so both of them wanted it. And so you find it trading hands over these times. And then eventually we read about the account of, as we mentioned, that little horn, Antiochus Epiphanes, who was one of the kings who arose in the Seleucid Northern Empire, one of the kings of the north, although he'd actually killed his younger brother to obtain that title. Or no, killed his nephew to obtain that title. He was the younger brother of the previous king. The king's infant son was the rightful heir, and he killed the infant son in order to seize the power.
A British contemporary of that would be made famous by Shakespeare, would be Richard III.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's that kind of contemptible character. That's how he's portrayed. And he was the one who we read in the previous chapter who stopped the daily sacrifices.
Yes, okay.
and killed a large number of the people of God. And here we're told he sets up the abomination of desolation. He set up a false god in the Holy of Holies itself, and sacrificed pig's blood on it, and so desecrated the most holy place in Jerusalem. So, yeah, that's the synopsis. What I find interesting is that the time between Malachi and Matthew is often spoken about as the silent years, where the Bible doesn't speak. But actually, if you read Daniel 11, you see that actually it speaks quite a lot. And Daniel 11 actually is the reason why many liberal scholars believe that Daniel was written in the time of the Maccabees, because that's the time that this is prophesying about, and it does so with such detail and accuracy that if you don't believe in divine inspiration, it's almost impossible to reconcile it with an earlier period.
And then we have kind of daughters of the kings of the south.
Yeah. It was this. I have studied, and I'm currently looking into this history. But actually, it was a common practice in those times for kings. Both their sons and their daughters were incredibly strategically significant. So their sons would hopefully become their heirs. But their daughters were used to cement alliances with rival kings. So it was a strategy of the Macedonians, those who preceded after Alexander, that when they wanted to make a deal, rather than signing a legal document, the way they ratified it is they would give one of their daughters in marriage, with the idea of, if you become part of my family, you're less likely to seek my destruction.
Right. Interesting.
And I have a member of my family now permanently in a position of high authority and influence right inside your court.
Yeah.
So we get to so chapter 11 really is a kind of a detailed explanation of that Hellenistic,
the Hellenistic period,
conflict,
yeah,
which leads us to I can't keep Antiochus Epiphanes. Is that how you say his name?
Antiochus
Epiphanes.
Yeah.
Does it lead us on at all to the emergence of Rome at all, or does the vision
possibly,
does the vision in 11 kind of finish with
possibly
with
the end of 11 becomes a bit more difficult to pin down historically. So some have taken it to be the rise of some of the early Roman generals.
Yeah. Some people speculate that Cleopatra's in here somewhere, don't they?
Yeah. Cleopatra actually was the last of the Seleucid empresses.
So she would be one of the daughters of the kings of the north, effectively.
South.
One of the daughters of the kings of the south.
So the Ptolemies were in the south in Egypt, and the Seleucids were in the north. So Cleopatra was like the last of the Macedonian rulers.
Yeah.
So the Ptolemaic kingdom was the last to fall to Rome.
Okay. So again, Daniel's getting a really clear picture of this is what's going to happen in human history.
Yeah.
This is where the purpose of God is going to be outworked and all these things.
Yeah.
Again, like Daniel 8 or Daniel 9, sorry, there's some tragedy involved in this period of time. There's there's a massacre, there's desecration of the temple and things like that.
Yeah.
Daniel 12 is a bit more hopeful.
It does, yes. So Daniel 12 is much more clearly about the end times and not just about the Jewish end times. So we're looking now right to the end of the timeline. So we've seen the rise and fall of nations. We've seen the first coming of Jesus and the rock that grows to fill the whole earth. And now it's like, well, where does that story end? And it's about, Michael and the final coming, the second coming, and significantly an explicit mention in the Old Testament of the resurrection of the dead, which, because it's such a key and prominent feature of the New Testament, we might assume that it's everywhere in the Old Testament. But here's a challenge for the reader or for the listener. Go and find references to the resurrection from the dead in the Old Testament, because there aren't many clear ones. And the most explicit one is right here, right at the end of Daniel chapter 12, where it says, though many who sleep in the dust of the earth will arise. Some will go to their reward and some to their punishment, and you, Daniel, will shine like one of the stars.
Yeah. That's fascinating, and we're getting a lot more, we're getting kind of points towards the book of Revelation again, aren't we?
We are, yes.
We're getting a reference to my favourite times and half a time again.
Yes, indeed. That prophetic time period.
we're getting some days. Are they relevant, or are they just numbers?
I think the 1,290 days, I think, corresponds with the 3.5 years.
Yeah.
One of them does anyway. The other one, the 1,335, is not one I've had personal revelation on yet. There are still some things that
That's
are
like the
hidden.
153 fish, isn't it? That's just
Yeah.
just there to tantalise.
I don't claim to have just to plumb to the depths. There's still things, as I said, I'm still reading up myself on the history around the Seleucid
It's
Empire, because I
fascinating.
just find it
Yeah.
fascinating. There's so much history there, and if God found it significant enough that he gave a whole chapter to it, I think there's more
Yeah.
there to be dug out.
Yeah.
But I've not I would love, one of my ambitions is to know the history well enough that I can correlate all the kind of events of Daniel 11 to their historic context.
Well, if anyone can, you can.
But I'm not there yet, and I don't know about the 1,335 days, but it is pretty close to the 1,290,
Yeah.
which is just another way of saying the 3.5 years.
Maybe we'll write to James Jordan in the States to see if he was done something. I do love the fact, though, that despite the fact that some of Daniel's visions are terrifying, some of them are quite emotionally draining,
Yeah.
and some of them are quite hard for us to understand, even if he understood them. The book of Daniel ends with an incredible note of hope, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
In the same way that his first vision, his first foray into vision was the vision of the stone becoming the mountain.
Yes.
And as you said in an earlier episode, the vision of the kingdom of God is a hopeful,
Indeed.
optimistic, positive one.
Indeed.
This description of the resurrection from the dead is also kind of a victorious, optimistic, hopeful vision.
Yeah.
And we don't know anything else about Daniel's life after this, do we? This is the
No.
latest.
This is the last
We know he's
instalment.
living.
Yeah.
This may well be really towards the end of his life.
Yeah.
I mean, he lives long enough that he can write it down. We know that for certain.
Yeah.
But it does conclude with a note of incredible hope, doesn't it?
It does. And Daniel himself didn't understand all the things in the book of Daniel, so that also is encouraging.
Yeah.
But what he did get was, as you say, the final word was a word of hope. That there will be a resurrection from the dead, and that God's purpose will prevail, and that you, Daniel, will have your place in it, just as each star has a place in the heavens to shine for the glory of God.
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to conclude.
Wonderful.
Because it does fill us with a great sense of excitement, not only to get back into the Word, read Daniel again for ourselves, for another, however many times we read it, to find more about it, but also to be kind of propelled forward in the purposes of God, knowing, as you've shared with us so many times over this series, God's sovereign, he's in control, his kingdom's on the increase, trials are numbered, they're not going to last forever, and there's a glorious, hopeful future for all of us, which involves a resurrection from the dead, and for those of us who are in Christ, shining like stars, just like Daniel's going to.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Amen.
So, Chris, thank you for joining us. I think we can definitely elevate Chris to friend of the podcast status, can't we?
Thank you.
absolutely.
I'm
So,
very, very honoured.
that
Thank you.
we'll make room for him on the wall along with Roger and Matthew.
Yeah.
We really trust that you've enjoyed and appreciated this series, and we will see you again. You'll hear from us again very soon with more from All Nations Church podcast. But that's season 7. It's a wrap. Thank you, Kier.
Oh, thanks, James.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening.
Right.